Today in the show, we have the House of Mouse headlines brought to you by laughingplace.com, your up-to-date resource for the latest Disney news every day of the week. This episode is being released on May 29th, 2024, and here's what's been going on in the world of Disney recently. The passing of a true Disney legend, another new streaming bundle on the way, Iger's thoughts on IP in the parks, and more.
Hear the latest news from the Walt Disney Company in today's House of Mouse headlines.
With Better Together, a Pixar Pal celebration performing at Disney California Adventure as part of Pixar Fest, the parade's lively theme is now available for streaming. The aptly titled song Better Together can now be found on services such as Apple Music, Spotify, and others. For even more Pixar Fest fun, you can also find Don't Fight the Rhythm from the Pixar Pals Playtime Party at the Fantasyland Theater streaming as well. So if you can't make it to the Disneyland Resort, you can still join the celebration by cranking up the volume and dancing along to these Pixar Fest tracks. A droid character who was first name-checked with the debut of Fire of the Rising Moons at the beginning of April has finally made his debut at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland. Now, Bard can be seen watching over the spaceport in Black Spire Outpost during the show. According to the backstory, Bard was owned by Tohan League, the storyteller known as the Lore Weaver. Through the droid, we're able to hear the Lore Weaver in his own words as Black Spire celebrates the Fire of the Rising Moons. In English, you can spot Bard while watching Disneyland's fireworks from Galaxy's Edge on your next visit. The Disney parks will soon be bringing flavors of the Bayou to their store shelves, allowing guests to bring them home with them. The Disney Parks blog has announced that Mama Odie's own brand of hot sauce is on the way alongside seasonings and a gumbo base from Dookie Chase. If that latter name sounds familiar, it's because the restaurant's owner, Leah Chase, was one of the main inspirations for Princess Tiana. Notably, this will mark the first time guests can buy Dookie Chase's gumbo base, seafood seasoning, meat seasoning, and fried chicken seasoning outside of Dookie Chase's restaurant. These items will be available at the Main Street Confectionery and the Critter Co-op when Tiana's Bayou Adventure opens this summer at Walt Disney World and later this year at Disneyland. Well, the wait for Tiana's Bayou Adventure at Magic Kingdom is nearly over. The new attraction is now set to officially debut on June 28th. When it does arrive, like with other ride openings in recent years, a virtual queue will be utilized. However, while a standby queue will not be available during the attraction's initial opening days, Disney says it expects to open standby soon after the ride's opening. In the meantime, guests can request to join the virtual queue via the My Disney Experience app at one of two times, 7 a.m. or 1 p.m. Alternatively, Tiana's Bayou Adventure will also be included as a Lightning Lane entrance in Disney Genie Plus service. To be clear, this means that the ride will be included alongside other offerings and will not require a separate individual Lightning Lane purchase. So get ready to try your luck for a chance to ride when Tiana's Bayou Adventure opens next month. In years past, Disneyland Paris has hosted a special event at Walt Disney Studios Park to celebrate Pride. However, with construction ongoing as the second gate transforms into Disney Adventure World, the celebration is moving over to Park Disneyland. This includes a special event on June 29th, which promises to be a vibrant and friendly atmosphere with select Pride festivities, such as a parade float with Mickey, Minnie, and their pals dressed up in Pride colors. More details on this year's Pride festivities are expected to be announced soon. In a recent Q&A session during MoffettNathanson Media and Communications Summit, Disney CEO Bob Iger discussed the Disney Parks IP strategy, including the possibility of more Moana experiences coming to the parks. After mentioning the success of Zootopia in Shanghai as an example of Disney leveraging its IP in the parks, Iger brought up Moana, stating that the company was starting to lean into investment in the parks for that IP. Iger not only mentioned the upcoming release of Moana 2 in November, but also noted that the movie was the #1 most streamed movie in America across all streaming platforms last year, despite coming out in 2016. Iger went on to state that IP will play a big role in the company's plans to turbocharge its parks investment, spending $60 billion over the next 10 years, or really less than that at this point, as they've been touting 10 years for over a year now. As he said, for quite a long time, new attractions and lands at the parks were based on, essentially, either very old IP or no IP, just an attraction. And starting really with Cars Land and Toy Story and a few others, we decided that almost all of our investment in the parks in terms of attractions and lands would be using that IP. And it's very, very clear what that delivered. While this probably doesn't come as a surprise to any fans who have been paying attention, it sounds as though we shouldn't expect any original attractions in the Disney parks anytime soon. The Broadway League recently awarded a Disney theatrical legend with a special award. Thomas Schumacher, the chief creative officer of Disney Theatrical Group, was honored with the Distinguished Lifetime Service Award for his landmark career. Schumacher has worked for the Walt Disney Company since 1988, but is most known for his work in making Disney a behemoth of Broadway. Congratulations to Tom on this remarkable award. Aladdin and The Lion King are currently running on Broadway at the New Amsterdam and Minskoff theaters, respectively. Ever since a WandaVision spinoff featuring Agatha Harkness was announced, the title of the show has regularly changed, with past subtitles including House of Harkness, Coven of Chaos, and Darkhold Diaries. In fact, Marvel recently trolled fans with a fake title, The Lying Witch with Great Wardrobe. Well, at this year's upfronts, the studio announced what is apparently to be the final title, Agatha All Along. What's more, they announced that the show would debut on September 18th with a 2-episode premiere. Elsewhere, it was revealed that Marvel is bringing back its Marvel television banner, starting with the release of Agatha All Along. According to Deadline, Marvel Studios' head of television streaming and animation, Brad Winderbaum, is hoping that this will help make viewers feel more comfortable jumping in wherever, without worrying about catching up on the past 16 years of the MCU. Agatha All Along from Marvel Television will arrive on Disney Plus this September, followed by Daredevil Born Again and Ironheart in 2025. Raven-Symoné is set to extend her relationship with Disney, although her long-running series is coming to an end. According to reports, Raven's home will not be returning for a 7th season. However, Symoné has signed a new multi-year overall deal at Disney-branded television, where she'll produce, direct, and develop projects across linear and streaming, with a focus on multicam comedies. This includes a Raven's Home spin-off titled Alice in the Palace, which has received a pilot order. In this show, Raven's young cousin Alice, played by McCall Michelle Harris, returns to England and reunites with Duchess Clementine, also portrayed by Harris, a young royal who looks exactly like her. In the process, Clementine gets a taste of the fun side of normal life, while Alice gets a taste of the finer side of regal life. In a statement, Symoné said, "Disney Channel has been the canvas for my creative expressions since I was 15 years old. After years of telling stories filled with heart, laughter, and togetherness, I'm excited to embark on the next chapter of this creative journey alongside my Disney family." Over the years, fans have seen a number of Disney attractions turned into films, including Pirates of the Caribbean, The Country Bears, Jungle Cruise, and The Haunted Mansion. Twice. Well, now a movie based on a different type of Disney destination is reportedly in development. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Goosebumps writer Darren Lemke has been tapped to write a script for Club 33. Yes, that exclusive dining location found in Disneyland's New Orleans Square. The film is being produced by Disney alongside Sean Levy's 21 Laps production company. The film's story will reportedly center on Kim, a young, aspiring detective living in present-day New York who receives a mysterious invite to the highly secretive Club 33. In this case, it's a magical and exclusive dining club that exists outside of time and space. The club's members are the greatest and most iconic members from the past, geniuses, royalty, and history makers. But when a murder is committed moments after her arrival, the patrons look to Kim to solve it. Kim, who despite her brilliance can't seem to get out of her own way, must rise to the occasion and find a way to capture the criminal amidst the greatest minds history has to offer. No other details for this project have been announced yet, but stay tuned as this Club 33 film climbs the waitlist. And now it's time to bring back Kyle Burbank from laughingplace.com. How you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing well, Jeff. How about you?
I'm doing okay, but I'm very sad that we need to start with a bummer story because, we've been doing this for a while. I've been doing this podcast for a long time. We have lost a lot of amazing Disney people, Disney legends, but I'd be lying if I said this one didn't hit hard because iconic songwriter and Disney legend Richard Sherman has passed away at the age of 95. Of course, if you're a Disney fan, you've probably heard of Richard Sherman or the Sherman Brothers. They wrote music for Walt Disney himself for films like Mary Poppins. Of course, Walt's favorite song is supposedly Feed the Birds from Mary Poppins, which he wrote or co-wrote with his brother. It's a Small World. The Carousel of Progress features my favorite song from them and perhaps my favorite Disney song even. There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow. The Enchanted Tiki Room, so much more. Their impact is huge. Both of them, Richard and his brother Robert. His brother Robert passed away in 2012, so 12 years ago, which I can't believe.
Yeah.
I remember when that happened. I remember, it doesn't feel recent by any means, but gosh, 12 years ago.
And I believe Robert was sick for a while before he passed as well.
Yeah, Richard was kicking and going up until recently, so we'll discuss that in a second. But they both became Disney legends in 1990, and in 2010, the Sherman Brothers were dedicated a window on Main Street, USA in Disneyland. So lots of honors for these two gentlemen, of course. Now they've both passed at this point. And yeah, I don't know. When I heard the news, I was really sad. I really, really loved Richard Sherman, and I'll tell you the story of how I met him. I don't know if you've heard it before, and I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast, but I'll tell it in a second. But I don't know, just curious if you have anything you want to add.
No, I'm right there with you on It's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow, or There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow, rather, being one of my favorites of not just theirs, but Disney in general. Like the optimism of it is something I've always loved. And, we get so much of the opposite these days that it's kind of taken on even more meaning. And same thing with It's a Small World, for as cheesy as it is, and you hear it 1,000 times when you go through the 15-minute ride, when you really do focus on it, it's a very powerful song, kind of disguised as a little children's thing.
Yeah, Richard used to always say it was a prayer for peace, is how he described it. And yeah, he was amazing. But have I told you the story of how I met Richard Sherman?
You mean we've talked a lot over the years, Jeff, so you might have, but okay. I'd like to hear it.
Wait a sec, you're saying you don't remember everything I say?
I'm sorry to say that I do not. Okay. I should, really clear some space and give you some dedicated brain room.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you should. It's a bit of a lengthy story, so I'm going to go through it, and so please forgive me. But, I'm not really sure when I recognized Richard Sherman and Robert Sherman by name. It might have been this very moment. 2009 was a really, really good year for Disney documentaries. A documentary came out called Waking Sleeping Beauty. Do you remember? Of course you remember Waking Sleeping Beauty, yes?
I saw it at the Burbank 16, and Don Hahn did a Q&A afterwards.
Oh, fantastic. I think I saw it at the Burbank 16 as well, but it wasn't with Don Hahn. It was just a normal screening. I remember seeing the poster for Waking Sleeping Beauty and being like, what is this? And just really intrigued. Went to the theater to see it, loved it. It's phenomenal. If you haven't seen Waking Sleeping Beauty, check it out. I think that's on Disney Plus.
It has been. It should still be. But yeah, that's absolutely worth. I watch it maybe every couple of years.
Yeah, it's the Disney animation renaissance, basically, from Mermaid through, the success of the 90s. But in any case, I bring up Waking Sleeping Beauty, and I said 2009 was an amazing year for Disney documentaries because before that film, if I'm remembering correctly, they showed a trailer for The Boys, the Sherman Brothers story. And the trailer alone is amazing. It's the story of the Sherman Brothers, Richard and Robert Sherman, who wrote all that stuff I just mentioned. And I was totally sold. The second I saw this trailer, I was like, I need to see this documentary. And I don't think it got as wide a release as Waking Sleeping Beauty did, and even that was a pretty small release.
Right. I don't think either got very wide releases. I think maybe, we're spoiled living in Los Angeles. But yeah, I don't think either one made it that far.
So for The Boys, I kept my eyes on it. It was, I believe, several months later, and it was being shown at the El Capitan, the theater that Disney owns in Hollywood. So I was like, great, I'm going to go to the El Capitan. And I went with my friend Jeff, and we watched this documentary, and our minds are blown at this point. And I was like, this is incredible. The story is wild. Their music, it's incomprehensible how much amazing music they've written. Fast forward pretty much exactly 1 week later. A couple friends of mine are on tour with Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, the musical. And if you don't know, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is another Sherman Brothers movie, although not Disney. A lot of people think of it as a Disney film, but it's actually a Broccoli film. What's his first name? I can't remember Broccoli's first name. But in any case, it's a separate company's film. Has very Mary Poppins kind of vibes to it, and the Sherman Brothers wrote music for it, and so it's often confused. So we're sitting there in the audience at Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, had great seats, and I'm with the same guy, my friend Jeff, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, how cool would it be if we could meet Richard Sherman tonight? And I kid you not 5 minutes later, Richard Sherman sat in the seat directly in front of me. People are going to think I'm making this up because I just told a similar story with John Williams, but it's completely true. He sat in the seat in front of me, and he was there with his son, and I introduced myself, and I was just like, hey, gosh, I saw the documentary. It was so good. I loved it. And of course, Richard was the sweetest man. I loved him. I saw him and a bunch of performances and panels and stuff since then. But I think my favorite memory is I had lunch with him at the Magic Castle once and just heard stories and chatted. And he was such a lovely man. And yeah, I never interviewed him on this podcast. And people are probably thinking Jeff, why didn't you interview him? And I'll tell you exactly why. I did ask him at one point, and it was around the time when Saving Mr. Banks was coming out, and Disney asked him to slow down on the PR because apparently he was just doing a lot. And so he was like, not right now, but ask me later. And later, time kept passing. And by the time I really got around to it, he had just slowed down in general and wasn't doing a lot of interviews. And it was just becoming more private, wasn't showing up at every D23 event. So I was just like, you know what? I missed my opportunity. I'm going to respect his space. I'm not going to ask him at this point, but I have amazing memories of him. He was just an amazing guy. So very, very sad news, but 95, almost 96. His birthday's June 12th. So he would have been 96 this June 12th. And yeah, incredible. So did that story ring a bell, or was it new for you?
Yeah, I think it was new for me. So thank you. And yeah, I mean, like you said, he's done a lot of press over the years. There's no shortage of clips of him at a piano, even one recently where they had him in Walt's office playing Feed the Birds. So you can go on a YouTube deep dive and find lots of treasures of him and sometimes his brother, if it's real back in the day.
And honestly, I'm not going to lie, part of me felt like I have nothing to interview him about because The Boys, the Sherman Brothers stories, is so complete. It doesn't really raise too many questions other than the one big question, which I guess we'll never really know now, of what really went down between him and his brother. Because if you haven't seen the documentary, check it out. But obviously that's not something I would ask him. He clearly doesn't want to talk about it. But yeah, the documentary is amazing, and it is on Disney Plus. I went and checked. So if you haven't seen The Boys, the Sherman Brothers story, 100% check it out. You will not be disappointed. You mentioned the recent video of him playing Feed the Birds in Walt's office, which of course, as the story goes, he would play for Walt on Friday afternoons per Walt's request. But that recent video, I want to mention this because, as I said, he was pretty active, although slowing down and not being as public, still doing stuff as of recently. I did a whole episode about the short Once Upon a Studio, and there's that beautiful moment where Mickey Mouse sees the portrait of Walt, has a moment there, and you hear Feed the Birds being played on the piano in the background, and that is what that video is. He went to Walt's office on a Friday afternoon, just a year, maybe a year and a half ago, whenever it was, played the tune, it was recorded, and that's what you hear in Once Upon a Studio. So pretty amazing. And from what I understand, 2 years ago in 2022, I had Christopher Gattelli, the Tony Award winning choreographer for Newsies, on the podcast. And he is currently working on a Jungle Book musical that Richard Sherman was involved with because, of course, the Sherman brothers wrote music for the Jungle Book as well.
But not bare necessities.
But not bare necessities. So, like I said, still active, an amazing legacy. I've never heard a bad word uttered about that man, like truly. And I know a lot of people that, knew him well or just barely knew him, but like, gosh, amazing, amazing, amazing. I could go on all day talking about Richard Sherman, so I'll stop there and see if there's anything you'd like to add.
I think you covered it.
All right. Well, then let's move on because Fantasmic has returned to Disneyland, but as we all expected, this is without the Maleficent dragon. And there are a few things. Did you watch video of this? I have not seen it in person yet.
I saw a little bit of it, enough to know that I was like, so it's basically what B mode was for all those years with maybe like a little razzle dazzle, but nothing on the scale of what we were hoping.
Pretty much. So listen, I am dubbing this Fantasmic 2.5 because I don't think it's complete or what they want. In fact, I know, like I've heard 2025, there will be some great stuff added. Maybe a dragon. I don't know. I really, truly don't know. But this isn't like complete. So I'm calling it Fantasmic 2.5. Let's just start with, this is the return of the Peter Pan segment. We've lost the quote-unquote new Pirates of the Caribbean, Columbia ship segment, and it's the return of Peter Pan. The crowd went wild, and I think for good reason. I think that this is a great quote-unquote addition. or
maybe they were just startled by it because they forgot about the big cannon blast that starts it off.
You probably hate that moment.
I mean, I time it really well, so I know exactly when it's happening.
You block your ears. Yeah, so the return of Peter Pan was pretty epic. I think it's nice to have it back. I think it just makes more sense within Fantasmic, so that's great. Something I will say, this on the first return performance, I don't know if this has been fixed since or not, but the flying carpet was not there for the Aladdin sequence, so that's a bit of a bummer. But the big thing is, of course, the climax with Maleficent. There is no Maleficent dragon. There's not even projection of a Maleficent dragon. There's a few things I noticed, and let me know what you noticed, but on the lift that she's always had, so of course she goes up into the air and she used to go into darkness, and then the mist screens would start, would see the dragon projected, and then we'd see the animatronic dragon appear. So she still goes up on that lift. I think there are new vines painted on the lift. Did you notice this?
Oh, I didn't pay that much. I scrolled through some B-roll, basically.
Okay. So I'd never noticed this before. I could be mistaken, but I feel like she used to just rise and it would be like a black lift below her. But there are definitely like vines either painted or projected on. I think they were like actually like a fabric, painted on a fabric or something supporting the lift. So that was new. And the other thing that's kind of interesting is there's more pyro bursts, which I guess is nice, but this is actually a shortened segment because they've cut out all of the dragon, like the dragon reveal moment. There's actually, 30 seconds or something like that cut out. That surprised me. So I'm like, oh, it's actually less than we had before. Not referring to just the animatronic. So that was kind of interesting. Anything else you noticed?
Not really. I actually forgot about Peter Pan returning because, like I said, I didn't watch the full video yet. But as soon as you started talking, I'm like, oh yeah, that happened too. But yeah, no, I just remember we always used to joke about Maleficent on a stick during that entire Summer Night-tastic because obviously Murphy broke like before the summer started, and so then it was Maleficent on a stick for the rest of the summer. So looking back at it, I was just like, oh, it's still Maleficent on a stick.
It's Maleficent on a stick, which is, similar to a dragon head on a stick, I guess, as, Disney's Hollywood Studios has. No, I mean, listen, they're winning in the dragon department these days, so I guess it's their turn to win. I'll be curious to see what comes. From what I understand, that dragon was hella expensive, like 4 times the budget of what they expected. So I don't know if they'll rebuild it. I hope so. It's a beautiful, magnificent thing, but I think what we got now can't be forever. having said that, if you've never seen Fantasmic, it's still a phenomenal show. But we had it so good during that summer nightastic year of 2009, and we just took it for granted. Once she finally premiered, basically it was the perfect storm. It was the original Fantasmic soundtrack of Fantasmic 1.0, plus new technology, including this phenomenal animatronic dragon. 2009 through 2017, I think, was the reboot. Yeah, 2009 to 2017 was like the sweet spot for Fantasmic.
Well, so basically the moral of this show is that 2009 was the greatest year in Jeff's life. Between two great Disney documentaries that were unvarnished but still produced by the company, and the Summer Night-tastic where the dragon finally worked. This is like, you should write a song about it. This is your When I Was 17.
You want to know what it's teaching me? It's teaching me that I cannot wait until 2029, because that means it will have been 20 years since 2009. And if you go back 20 years before 2009, that brings us to 1989, which is the year of The Little Mermaid, my favorite Disney animated feature, and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. So every 20 years, Disney blows my damn mind.
And there is the 20-year thing, like, every 20 years, that's when people start getting nostalgic about 20 years before. That's why, like, Happy Days about the 50s was in the 70s.
There we go. So, yeah, 2029. I'm here for it. I'm waiting.
We're almost there, Jeff.
Let's
Just
hope I survive.
That's like nothing.
I mean, it practically is nothing. So, cool. Although a lot can change in 5 years. But, yeah, so those are my thoughts on the new Fantasmic. Of course, I love Fantasmic, but it's just not the show that I grew up with and loved. So 2009 was the sweet spot. So when it comes to this new Fantasmic, here's where I think they just made a mistake. You will notice they didn't really have a big press event for this. I know they invited a little bit of press, but there wasn't a big press event. They didn't have a cast member preview. And to me, that just points to this isn't, we're kind of trying to keep it under the radar, that this isn't as good as it once was. I think the mistakes they made were it was just gone for a really long period of time. I think longer than it should have. No, don't get me wrong. I realized there was like stage infrastructure that needed to be fixed, and there was some tweaking that needed to be done, but I don't think it needed to take as long as it did. I think it
was almost a full year.
Yeah, that's a long time. So it could have just been the mentality of, oh, well, the holidays are here. We really don't need Fantasmic or whatever. But I don't know. The longer we waited, I think the grander our expectations were. So I think that was a mistake. And also just like the new magic spin. I think that's what they called it, right? New magic or something like that. And they said it was going to return with a new magic. And
they always do that.
Yeah, I think they shouldn't have. I think they should have just been like, Fantasmic will return.
Well, that's probably why they put Peter Pan back in. They're like, we can say something is like not necessarily new,
old magic.
Something you like.
Yeah, so that's where I think they made a mistake. I love to see this show keep getting plussed. I love to see new technology being brought into it. So we'll see what happens for it with the future. But that's where we are right now with Fantasmic. And I do look forward to seeing it in person sometime soon. As I've said many times, I don't repeat the show like I used to with 1.0, but it is what it is, and we're moving on. So shall we move on?
Let's do it.
Great, because fans of 1990's Home Alone, another great year, 1990, can own a huge and important prop from the film franchise. The iconic 5-bedroom, 6-bathroom house featured in the film has gone up for sale for the first time in 12 years, and you can get it if you have an extra $5.25 million laying around. And that's, I think, what they're asking for. Who knows?
That's the asking price. I mean, You can lowball them if you want. Try to get it for $4.7.
Let's do it. $4,750? Is that what
you think I can afford that?
So the property is located in Winnetka, Illinois, and has been expanded since the film, but the owners maintained the outside of the recognizable brick-constructed colonial. Thank the Lord. I can't stand it when people buy a famous house and don't respect that. Did I ever tell you the story about the Breaking Bad house?
Well, I know that the Breaking Bad one, people kept throwing pizzas on the roof.
Oh, I forgot about that. Maybe that's why they're so angry. But I kid you not. So I was driving across the country and I specifically stopped in New Mexico to check out some of the Breaking Bad locations. And I went to the house and it's like they're famously known for not wanting people showing up. They had their entire sidewalk just lined up with trash cans. So you can't really get near it. And then as I happened to be there, which was just like some random weeknight, the owners were like sitting there on folding chairs on their front lawn, like watching. It felt like they were watching for people. Could have just been random timing. Who knows? Maybe that's something they do to enjoy. But yeah, they were intense. So my point is, I like it when people embrace the history of famous homes. And frankly, if I had lots of money to spend, that would be like my business. I would Airbnb all of these places or do something tourism wise with it. I love like the Christmas Story House has done that. And it's just great. So many people want to visit these places. And I honestly hope whoever buys it does the whole Airbnb thing. I think that would be great, but I'm not holding my breath.
That's true. I mean, I don't know this is a suburb of Chicago. I don't know what the rules are for that in Chicago, but that's... Yeah. Hopefully. But I do want to mention, little tangent, you mentioned people really embracing it. Our friend Justin just wrote a piece for LP. He went on a thing a couple weeks ago where a bunch of Indiana Jones fans went around Northern California, and apparently the person who owns a home that's, you know, the exterior scene in the movie, I forget which scene, I'm not as big of a fan as he is, but apparently the owner is very much like came up to him and it was like, yeah, come on, whatever you want to do, take photos, and I'm here to answer any questions and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely that latter group that you're talking about of people who know what they've bought and really appreciate people, the fandom.
Yeah, that's cool. I know the Hocus Pocus house, very similar. Very happy to live there and stuff. And I do want to mention, so there's a video that went out where we see the interior of the house, and it, of course, looks very different from when the film was shot. But I also want to mention that the family stuff inside the home was shot at the new Trier Township High School, which they turned basically into a soundstage, and they built all the sets there. There might have been like small pieces shot inside the house. I'm not 100% sure, but there's a great show on Netflix called The Movies That Made Us, and one of their episodes was about Home Alone. And they definitely mention how like those interior house sets were built in that school turned into a soundstage.
Didn't they have everything built and then Paramount pulled the plug and then Fox immediately revived the production?
Yeah. I can't remember if it was Paramount or not, but there was another studio who was making it and they pulled the plug and it was just like a panic to get another studio. And I think they kind of had Fox waiting in the background.
My memory of it. They might have been a little shady dealing, but...
Yeah, if you are a Home Alone fan, definitely check out the Movies That Made Us episode about Home Alone. It's really fantastic. Apparently, this is like the second location to go up recently because the Upper West Side townhouse featured in Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, went up for sale for a whopping $6.7 million last December. So I could have sworn that location was on the Universal Studios backlot. I could have sworn I'd heard that, but apparently not. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know what part of it, but how funny that a little, I don't know about little, but an apartment in New York is more than this gigantic home in the suburbs of Chicago. Right. So I do want to mention, folks, if you're a Home Alone fan, I highly recommend episode 847 of Disney Coast to Coast, where me and my pal Aaron Wallace ranked all 6. Yes, there are 6 Home Alone films. I actually re-listened to that episode this past holiday season, and like, it's a damn good episode. It was around the time that the reboot came out.
It was when Home Sweet Home Alone came out, yes, and that kind of prompted that episode. But yeah, it's a really good episode, so check it out. It'll be in the show notes, episode 847. But moving on from there, Disney and Warner Brothers Discovery have announced their own streaming bundle. This makes me want to kill myself. Disney Plus, Hulu, and Max have banded together for a new streaming bundle to be available this summer in the US. The bundle will be available to purchase on any of the 3 streaming platforms, but each streamer will be accessible via their own apps. Both ad-based and ad-free tiers will be available. This joins Warner and Disney's soon-to-be sports streaming platform alongside Fox. The forthcoming sports streaming platform for ESPN, Fox, and Warner Bros. Discovery now has a name, and it's Venue Sports. As of right now, there isn't a price point for the new bundle, but more information is expected to arrive soon. I mean, what the hell? This is insane at this point. I don't love the Disney Plus Hulu confusion stuff, but at least it's under the same umbrella. Now we're bringing in Warner Brothers,
but it's not integrating into the app the same way. It's just you pay lower price to subscribe to both, which I imagine that a lot of people already do. So I don't really see a downside.
I just don't like. I'm sure most people don't give a crap. I don't like when all of these companies merge and there's just nothing individual.
They're not
anymore.
merging though. They're just offering you a chance to spend less money.
I guess. I don't know.
No, that's what people are upset about. They're like, oh, this sounds like cable, and it's like, okay, but it's still a heck of a lot cheaper than cable. And the difference is that with cable, the reason that people were upset with it is that you can't just say, well, I only want ESPN, or I don't need whatever the heck FXX is, but you have to buy into a minimum package. Whereas this, you could still unbundle them all if you want. No one's forcing you to pay for Max as well. But if you already subscribe to Max and you subscribe to Hulu and Disney Plus, then, like I said, I don't know what the price point is, but you could maybe save a few dollars.
But they are merging for the sports thing.
They're not. I mean, it's a joint venture. It's a separate product, and it's just for sports.
I like things in nice packages. This is like I've got 4 different kinds of wrapping paper on one gift, and it drives me nuts.
Well, no, it's laying out 4 different types of wrapping paper, and then you get to decide which one you want to wrap it in.
All right, Kyle, fair enough. It still drives me crazy. Not a fan of this.
Jeff hates choices.
I don't like... Here, I used to...
We need a dictator.
Listen, Jeff's
over it. He doesn't want to make any more decisions.
Listen, my brain's always worked this way. The day I discovered that as a kid going to Universal Studios Florida, I'll never forget, the day I discovered, Beetlejuice isn't a Universal film, and it was in the parks, and Ghostbusters isn't a Universal film. My mind was blown. I was like, what? And even Indiana Jones at Disney MGM Studios and stuff like that, I was like, what is happening here? It always, my brain just, I don't like it. I like things to stay in their lanes. And here's the thing. I like studios and companies when they're...
But you love, you love Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yes.
And you're perfectly okay with there being Warner Brothers characters mingling with these Disney characters?
Yeah, because it's just one movie.
Okay, well, you have to keep these things in boxes, except for every once in a while when the ants
except for when it's really good. Yeah, when it's really, 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 really good, I guess, I don't know. Now you're going to make me hate that film. Thanks, Kyle. Now that I'm going to have to sit and contemplate that and hate Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Everybody, it's Kyle Burbank to blame for that.
You crossed the streams.
That's right. But
I've never seen Ghostbusters, but I know that.
You still haven't seen it?
No.
Come on, Kyle. Get
with
it.
Other things to do.
I know. The list of stuff to watch is insane.
Not even Halloween yet.
It's not a Halloween movie. You would know that if you listened to That Halloween Podcast, brought to you by the Podcast Network, where we only feature films that are Halloween specific. Plug. Anywho, so all of that's happening, and yeah, my brain doesn't like it, but Kyle's brain does. Anything else you'd like to add?
To that story?
Yeah, or anything.
Well, something that was very specific to one brand is I did go to the Disney 100 exhibit that just opened in Kansas City. I actually went to the D23 premiere night event. Pretty nice exhibit, but I will say, remember when everyone was freaking out about the Walt Disney hologram, quote unquote? I'm doing air quotes for the people on the internet.
Yeah.
It was so not a big deal. It was basically just, they kind of had a little space there, like a stage, but it didn't look, it was nothing. It was so much nothing.
Does it basically look like Rey in Rise of the Resistance?
It doesn't even stick out. It looked very flat to me. Maybe I was just at a bad angle, but it didn't seem anything special, except that I guess you can kind of tell that, because I think it's probably a fresh Like, I don't think he actually said these things. So you can tell that it's kind of like computer generated. But yeah, it was not exciting. That was probably the least favorite part of the entire exhibit, just because, not that I didn't like it. It was just like, oh yeah, that I forgot completely about it before I went. And as the show was starting, I'm like, oh yeah, this thing. And then I was like, wow, we made a big deal about this for no reason. Just like Minnie in a pantsuit in Paris. I remember that the other day. And I was like, yeah, that was a big 2 weeks.
I don't remember people being upset about the hologram part. I just remember people feeling like it didn't really match Walt's look or voice appropriately. That's what I remember the freak out being about.
I remember people just being upset about the idea of there being a hologram in general. I don't know if people, because I remember the hubbub before anyone saw the thing.
Yeah. Now, what was your favorite part of the exhibit?
I mean, honestly, I really liked all the Marvel section. There was some really cool costumes and stuff there. But no, it was cool. They did a good job. I mean, I walked through it during the D23 event. It was timed entry, but obviously the amount of people per time thing was very small. So I really felt like I had the place nearly to myself. So I didn't get to see how people interact with all the different interactive elements. But I thought that it was cool that there was some little things that like 6 different stations that kids could go and explore. And then just the parks part is always cool. And then I also like that they do, right before you actually go into the main exhibit, there's a like local section. So obviously Kansas City has plenty of ties to Walt. So some of that is already in the exhibit itself, like laughograms and stuff like that. But the presenting sponsor was Bank of America, which is not really a Kansas City connection, but they did have some stuff specific about Disney's ties to Bank of America. But then also Hallmark, which is a Kansas City-based company. Lots of ties to Hallmark and Disney over the years. So I thought that was just a kind of a cool touch to bring some exclusive stuff to the exhibit.
That is cool. I appreciate that.
And Union Station is a really beautiful place. This is my second time there. The first time was actually just for the announcement of this exhibit coming there. But yeah, just a really, really cool area. So it was fun to get to explore more of it.
Well, that is super cool. And Kyle, do you remember last time when we were recording House of Mouse Headlines, I was just running in the house from the Walt Disney Studios, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I forgot to tell you something that I learned on this tour that gobsmacked me and thrills me and just makes me realize Walt Disney and I would have been besties, I think. Like, I think we're on the same wavelength.
Sharing a pack of cigarettes and
well, no, not that part. Not that. That he would have been like, Jeff, you're a nerd. But in any case, no, listen to this. Tell me if you've heard this before, because first of all, my tour, we were waiting to go into Walt's office and we had like a little bit of extra time waiting for the group ahead of us to move forward. And so he just started telling us some like fun stories and stuff. And he said something in the animation building that I honestly was like, are you supposed to tell us this? I couldn't believe he was telling us this. Back in the 1940s, there was a male-only penthouse club at the Walt Disney Studios for their top animators, including a rooftop patio where they used to take nude sunbaths. What? There was nude sunbathing happening on the top of the animation building at the Walt Disney Studios. And I love this. And the only reason this stopped is because the hospital went in across the street and the nuns saw them. And that's what put the kibosh on it. And that's the same office where the same hospital rather, where Walt Disney died. And the story goes, he could look out his window, see his studio. And now I'm wondering if he was thinking of those good old days on the rooftop of the animation building. Had you ever heard this before?
No, I've never heard that.
I couldn't believe I was hearing this. And I was like, I can't believe he's telling us this. I don't know. I just found it
Well,
riveting.
actually, I did know that because, every June they have the Walt Disney Weenie Roast at the studio. That's completely made up.
Yes, I know. But that's that. So that's fantastic. And on top of that, the 4 shower heads that he has in his bathroom shower at his apartment at Disneyland. I was just like, this guy gets it, man. He gets it. So bravo, Walt Disney. So That's all I gotta add. Isn't that fantastic?
Yes.
One other thing that's a little more sane that I'll mention is I finally watched something that people are going to say, oh my gosh, Jeff, you didn't watch this immediately when it came out, is the Goosebumps series on Disney Plus.
I've heard good things.
Holy hell, fantastic. I know a bit earlier we talked about the Goosebumps writers working on the Club 33 film.
I think this is the Goosebumps that was the movie, the Jack Black movie. I don't think it's the Disney series. I thought the same thing until I looked it up earlier today.
I made the assumption just because Disney and Disney, but perhaps you're right. But in any case, the Goosebumps TV series, which by the way, I was not a huge fan of the original series. I was very much an Are You Afraid of the Dark guy on Nickelodeon. It never got into Goosebumps, felt a little too young for me. Of course, there are standout episodes that I enjoy, but so I wasn't like going in as a huge Goosebumps fan to begin with, but I actually watched the first episode, just to bring up Aaron Wallace again. When I was visiting him in October, we watched the first episode, and I think we were both surprised that like it has some legit scares in it. You will not like it, Kyle, but I was like, wow. And I was just so busy with the Halloween season and stuff that I never got around to it again. So I set out, I was like, I'm going to sit down and watch this finally. I was really kind of blown away. And I loved it so much that I'm happy it's returning, but I'm kind of sad it's an anthology series where it's going to be a whole new cast because Justin Long was so good. I love Justin Long. He's so good in Goosebumps. And it's just so good. Like every episode, one of the fun things they do is every episode is a title of a book. It's the kind of the story of the book. The story of the book is weaved into that episode, but it also fits into a whole through line story for the whole series as well. So really good. If you haven't checked it out and you're interested in a little bit of spooky, check out Goosebumps on Disney Plus.
You're right about Justin Long. He's in a lot of underrated things. Like
he's underrated.
Accepted, one of my favorites. Yeah. Going the Distance.
That I don't know.
I think he's just not that into you as well. Could be wrong about that one, but
he's great. He does like comedy really well, and he's good at horror stuff. And oh my gosh, his physical comedy in Goosebumps is like the best I've seen, like John Ritter level kind of physical comedy stuff. Like he's fun to follow on Instagram if you don't, because he loves to like just mess with people. He does this thing all the time where he'll pretend to like slam into a door accidentally just to get like reactions from people around him. And he thinks it's the funniest thing. And it is really funny, but like, he's like a child. And I love Justin Long. He's fantastic and so happy with the Goosebumps series. By the way, speaking of horror in Justin Long, if you haven't seen, what was it called? It's a Wonderful Knife. This past holiday season, it was a horror version of It's a Wonderful Life, and he plays a very creepy character in that as well. So, Justin Long. Let's just do a Justin Long podcast. He has one. By the way, his podcast is phenomenal. It's called Life is Short with Justin Long, and he's a great interviewer. Like a really good... Have you heard any episodes?
No, I didn't know he had one.
Oh, like he's like a superb interviewer, like very, 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 very good, and highly recommend. So this is the Justin Long episode of Disney Coast to Coast. There we go.
And now he's getting replaced with Ross Geller from a show you've never watched.
Say it again?
The new season of Goosebumps is going to have David Schwimmer.
Yes.
Best known as Ross Geller.
Okay, I didn't know his last name. Okay.
Why would you?
Why would I? Pivot!
You got that at least.
I learned it from you, sir. All right, so we're losing our minds. I think we'll wrap it up here. Have a good one, Kyle. I'll talk to you again in a couple weeks.
Sounds good.
To read more about any and all of the stories you've heard here today, simply visit the show notes link in this episode's description. You've heard the news, and now I want to hear what you have to say about it. What do you think of the latest Fantasmic update? Share your thoughts on that or any other topics mentioned in today's episode. Call 818-860-2569 and you may just hear yourself on a future episode of Disney Coast to Coast. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Don't miss any future episodes by subscribing and following Disney with a Z, Coast to Coast on your favorite podcast app, where episodes are available 24/7. Thanks to I Live Laugh Love 49 for leaving a 5-star rating and review saying, I find myself actually waiting for this podcast to be posted every Wednesday. Definitely 100% recommend. Thank you so much for that review. Leave a review wherever you listen to the podcast, and you may just hear it read on a future episode. Until next time, anything you need can be found in this episode's description. From additional information and links discussed in this episode found in the show notes, contact info to reach me, access to the show's official website, some free gifts from me to you, and so much more. So be sure to check out this episode's description. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!